All right. Last on the chopping block, we have Near. What do you have for us?
Um, keep wanting to call this Tasukade Hotel, but it's not.
Yeah, yeah, me too.
I watched Apocalypse Hotel, which is a Sly Games Pictures anime original. Um,
Hmm.
How is it related to Tasagari Hotel?
it's not.
Oh,
Yeah, but yeah. So this anime original. The basic premise is um Earth has sort of suffered a some sort of weird plant-based super virus that specifically only targets primates, and it makes
Hmm.
the air basically poison. And so humanity has, in their desperation, evacuated to space.
so the
Um,
trees are fighting back? Is that what we're saying?
yeah, yep, correct.
Damn those
Um,
Damn,
trees.
it's just like
Mark
The
Wahlberg
Happening.
talks to a talking plant or a plastic plant. Um,
Do mushrooms count as a plant? Would you call that?
no,
No, it's
they're
fun.
fungus.
Okay, making sure.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, so humanity has effectively abandoned Earth. Um, and
Losers.
somewhere in Japan there is a hotel um named
Wait, on in Japan or on Earth?
yes. What do you think? Is Space Japan? Like what?
Yeah.
No,
Neo Japan exists in Gundam. Why couldn't there exist
Hey,
in?
yeah,
because this is on
well,
Earth.
we're not covering the
Um,
Gundam series yet. Yeah.
but yeah, there's a hotel and it's staffed by robots. Um, and the robots sort of have the duty to upkeep the hotel and await the sort of return of humanity. And the series starts off 100, I think roughly 100 years um, after humanity has left. I think they said something like 37,000 days, um, which I think is like roughly 100 years, right? Um,
So it's like
and
Wally.
what?
You said there's robots waiting for or for waiting for Earthlings to come back, right? So it's not Wally.
Um, I don't think Wally's really waiting for Earthlings to come back. I think he's just a fucking trash droid, dude. Like,
Yeah, it's just like
No,
kind of like the Bastion kind of thing in Overwatch where they're
weren't
just like
what?
everyone is just here, kind
No,
of. Right?
weren't the space people waiting for Earth to be has signs of life so they can come back? It's kind of like Wally.
um, if you want to make that reach, sure. It's kind of like the opposite though, but yeah. Um, but yeah, the basic premise is just that um the sort of hotel staff are waiting for humanity to come back, and it's this sort of um somewhat bittersweet, melancholic, semi-episodic series where the staff sort of go about their routine. Um, and as the series goes on, uh, the guests that sort of show up at the hotel are a bit more extraterrestrial than expected. Um,
Hmm.
with a lot of them being, um, aliens. And then so far there's only 3 episodes out. And there's like been um an alien that's shown up that doesn't speak any language known to man, obviously. And then there's been this sort of group of aliens that sort of initially disguise themselves as humans, but reveal themselves to be aliens. And um, yeah, it's basically just semi-episodic stuff. Um, and then I guess as the series goes on, tends to reveal more about what may or may not have happened to humanity up in space. Um, I think early on early they say that there's like underwater um like societies too, like they evacuated underwater too. Um, but they haven't mentioned that at all, so I feel like that might have probably not worked out too well. But
Mhm.
yeah, so it's pretty interesting. It's a pretty interesting series. It's fairly comedic, but again, it's got this sort of melancholic, sort of bittersweet undertone running through it pretty much throughout. And I have a funny feeling it's probably gonna get pretty heavy later on. Um,
Yeah, it usually is. Yeah, it's the same.
yeah,
Everybody kind of predicts it from these series. Yeah.
yeah. But as of right now, it's fairly quaint. The
Mhm.
characters are really nice. There's this sort of main, which is Yechio. She's this sort of stewardess robot, um, who's obviously the most human out of the cast. She's got
Mhm.
this sort of AI guiding her actions. It's sort of um, stimulated emotion, stuff like that. And then I guess the next most human attendant is the doorman robot, whose entire purpose is to open the door for guests. Um, but because there are no guests, he kind of just opens the door for no reason. And because he does this so often, he overheats constantly, and he's like constantly collapsing. Um, and then the rest of the robots are kind of these little beeping um, things on wheels that kind of just make noise. And then later on, there's this other robot that's not part of the hotel staff, but he's this sort of environment checker robot. And he's sort of his purpose is to basically just scan the environment, take samples, and read whether it's like sustainable for human life, and then send that up off to space. Um,
Yeah, that's literally Wally. Hold on. The other robot in Wally.
yeah, but he's got this sort of uh cool guy playboy accent. Pretty funny. Um, he's constantly wanting to shoot the aliens with his big laser gun because they're like foreign entities to the environment and stuff. Um, it's a pretty fun cast of characters, and I think they work pretty well together. But yeah, there's this constant sort of looming um what has actually happened to humanity, especially because as this again, there's only 3 episodes out, but it initially sets it up as 100 years after humanity is left, and then I think after the first guest leaves, it does like a 50-year time skip, um, like nothing has happened. So I think as the series goes on, it's probably gonna get like longer and longer and longer. Um, but yeah, um, I like it.
So my
It's fun.
question is, with the story, is it obviously it's doing like foreshadowing and talking about kind of doing exposition on what happened to Earth, stuff like that. Do you think that's going to affect the ending of the story, or do you think it's just going to be a kind of very smooth, kind of chill? Oh, this happened to the Earth, but like we're all here, and like the stewardess girl is more um, kind of just learning more about like humans and like robots, or not robots, but like the aliens and like the extraterrestrial beings and like how they are and like how she is and how she has to interact with the staff and stuff like that, staffing robots. And do you think it's more about that, or do you think the fate of the Earth that previously happened that's going to end up being a deeper story that's going to cause drama in the later episodes?
I mean, it's gonna cause drama for sure. I think what the again, this is like really early on predictions, right? But if I had to
Uh-huh.
make like a I guess educated guess onto what like the impact of like the revelation of what the fate of humanity is, because it's leaning pretty heavily right now to be like, yeah, humanity's fucking dead. Like they're just gone.
Mm.
Um,
But that's
and
not going to is it, and that is that going to affect the robots and like the staff in the hotel down the line is the question.
I think it
Is
will.
there okay.
I think it will create drama. Obviously, it'll create like a general emotional sort of turmoil within like the main character,
Okay.
especially because her entire like the main character's entire motivation, like her like literally the reason she wakes up every day is for
Uh-huh.
the return of humanity. right? Like she is awaiting
Mm.
humanity's return.
So she's trying
Um,
to so you think at the end it'll be something like, "Oh, like, they're going so, like, what reason do I have to live?" And then she'll, like,
yeah,
find her
I
she'll
yes,
dig herself out, yeah.
yeah. I think it's going to be
Okay, okay.
sort of like finding oneself, sort of creating one's
Yeah.
sense of self. Her sort of finding her own
Uh-huh.
independence, regardless of
Yeah,
her
yeah, yeah.
programming type of stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
I think
yeah.
it's gonna be something like that. I think it's fairly standard route to take, but I think it's also probably the safest one, right?
Uh-huh.
It's pretty tried and true for these robot type stories.
Mhm.
Um, and I think with how it is right now, I think they could pull it off. It might stumble a bit here and there, but you know, um, I think tonally it should work, right? With what's here right now. What's here right now is pretty good. The hook is there. The sort of hints at emotional drama are pretty good. They're handled pretty well here. Um, and the comedy's nice. The balance is pretty good, I'd say. Um, but yeah, I don't see this taking like a really sort of emotional, existential um bent to it. I think it'll probably be a pretty balanced thing, and the characters will go
It'll
through
mostly
this
be
sort of
centered around the girl and won't cause any, like, "Oh, this hotel is closing down," or anything like that. It's not gonna be
yeah,
that
yeah.
big.
I don't think so. I think
Mhm.
especially because like the series is sort of set up to be this sort of um like as the years go by, like more and more aliens end up visiting Earth. And then obviously the main character will sort of be like, well, humanity may not come back, but like as time goes on, these sort of extraterrestrial visitors will visit Earth, and they'll still need a place to stay, right? And so that's
Right.
sort of my purpose or whatever, right? I think
Mhm.
it'll probably just something like that. Um, but yeah, um, it's pretty good, I think. It's a
Mhm.
solid setup for sure. Um,
Yeah.
so long as it doesn't get itself right.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
I
yeah.
think that the way the general structure it has right now, it probably won't do that. Um, but you never know with these anime originals,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Do you wanna
but
go
yeah,
over the audio visuals real quick?
um, yeah, sure. Again, this is Play Games Pictures.
Mhm.
And
This
as
is
we know,
second pictures series that they're
yeah,
doing, obviously.
yeah. As we know, Play Games Pictures has a lot of fucking money. Um, and it shows here. This is a really nice looking
Yes,
show.
yes.
It's
Yes.
obviously not as well animated as something like Uma Musume. There's a
Mhm.
decent amount of CG here. Pretty much all the robots are CG. But they don't
Mhm.
look bad at all, in my opinion. I
Yeah,
think they look
I
pretty
think it
good.
fits obviously with the theme, which is the theme was nicely made to fit with the limit how do I say this? Just the limitations, I guess, of the art technologies that we have today, which is
Yeah.
like that's a
Um,
lot, like how a lot of series are going kind of going. Yeah.
yeah. The color palette here is really nice. Got this sort of warm pastel colors for the characters. And then
Hmm.
the backgrounds are very um warm colors during the sunset, very bright greens during the day. Obviously, the city has been overtaken by nature, so there's a lot of sort of trees growing up through the buildings, a lot of cracked pavement, grass coming up through the sidewalk. Um, but because the hotel is sort of being maintained um, amongst this, it sort of stands on its like it sort of stands out in the fact that it's the sole building that's like not sort of broken down and dilapidated and overgrown. And it's a really cool sort of aesthetic. It's kind of reminiscent of something you see in like near Automata, right? Where,
Hmm.
nature has sort of overtaken the city. But it's a really nice look. The characters are animated really well. There's a lot of really cute visual gags and stuff here. There's a lot of really good character acting and stuff, especially from the main character Yachio. She's very uh, like visually expressive, which is really
Right,
cute.
right, right, right.
Um,
And what I also liked was the obviously the robots are pretty CG and but the aliens are either they've either been blended very well or they generally are. I think they are hand drawn, right? So I
Yeah, yeah,
do like that part of it.
yeah. Um, the alien designs are also really cool, I think. Like
Mm,
the first alien is like this weird sort of like a cactus looking creature, but he's made up of like these green tentacles. And the way he's shaped it makes it look like he has a top hat on.
mhm,
But he's got this sort of like blank hole for a face. And he's wearing this weird like just bag as as like clothing. And he looks really weird. But he looks pretty cool. And then some of the other aliens that they've shown in the TV are pretty cool looking too. Um, the second sort of visitors being these like tanuki creatures that disguise themselves as humans, but even when they're disguised, they've got little like leaves sticking out of their head. They've
mhm,
got tanuki tails, stuff like that. It's all very cute. Um, and then the music is also quite quaint too. I think it's really nice. Um, Sort of just does its job setting the mood. The OPED, I think the OP is really I think the OP is really nice. Um, it's Skirt by Aiko. The song is pretty catchy, I
mhm,
think. The visuals are I think they strike a pretty good tone in the sort of um the visuals where it's a sort of dance number, but it's a sort of half and half dance number where half of it is Gachio dancing alone, which is obviously pretty symbolic for her sort of waiting day in, day out for humanity to come and
mhm,
them not just like not showing up, right? And
right.
her sort of feeling alone in that. And then half of it's her dancing with the staff and the other guest stuff and sort of, striking that balance, right? It's a
Mhm,
good OP, I think. The song is catchy. The dance is well animated. Um, the ED is Capsule, which is also by Aiko. So obviously somebody on the production staff is a fan. It's also pretty catchy, but it's a bit more standard visually, you know, standard stuff. Um,
right.
it's an ED, right? It's a bunch of the characters doing stuff to a more slower paced song. Yeah, the audio visuals are very solid, especially for the fact that Side Games Pictures is doing two series this season. One of which is fucking Uma Musume, which I'm sure is
Yeah.
uh you know siphoning quite a bit of money. This somehow still stands out on its own. It's got a very um, pleasing style. It's very well animated, I think, um, as well. Um, yeah, it's just it's a very really overall solid series, I think. Um,
Yeah. And I'm surprised that like obviously the direction and the story like scripting kind of aside, um obviously we knew that Games when they were announcing say um Brave Fang Brave Fern and they were like this is a little bit more of like graphic proof of concept kind of thing, right? And when they came out, we were saying, okay, well, they're trying to flex. They're trying to release this kind of stuff. And we expected a pace of generally kind of like one series per season, which is very standard for prolific slash larger studios, like consistent studios, right? But we didn't expect this sort of output at this sort of pace, at this sort of quality this quickly. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So they're
it's very
gathering a
impressive
lot of
for
the
sure.
people. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, yeah. As for a couple other notes, I think it's worth shouting out the voice cast, especially Yachio's voice actress, um,
Mhm.
Saho Shirasu. Um, she seems to be a relative newcomer to the industry. She hasn't had really very many main roles at all. I think the only other one I saw was like main role in a random hentai ONA. Um, so this seems
Okay.
to be her. This seems to be her first like main role.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
Acto Breakout, that's not smut, yes.
yeah, yeah. Um, and she does a pretty good job here. There's a scene um where she's talking to first alien and she's kind of trying to communicate with him and she speaks like 5 different languages, like rapid pace back to back. Um,
Yeah.
and like even though I'm pretty sure she's probably just reading from a script, like she kind of it's kind of impressive, right? To just be able to
Right.
do
Right.
that. Um, and her comedic timing and stuff is also very, very good. Um, it's also where I think another pretty strong shout out is Yukihiro Nozuyama, who voices the alien himself. And he's
Mhm.
literally just making like weird ass fucking like gloop glorp noises, but he somehow manages to make it into like an actual like, you know, funny comedic performance. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's quite good. Um, yeah, the entire voice cast just sort of they bounce off each other quite well, I think. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, this
Being able to
show's
do that is also a talent because it's like R2D2 kind of stuff. You know what I mean? It's
yeah,
like you have to
yeah.
have a little bit of an art to it. Yeah.
Yeah, this show's is actually quite impressive. It was definitely not something I expected to be quite this polished. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Especially from an anime original where we're dealing with you know um sort of a post-apocalypse robot story, right? A lot of these are very melodramatic. They're very like you know what am I without my programming type of shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
who
Yes.
wow,
Yeah.
I was
Exactly.
programmed to do one thing, but now I can't do that. So who am I? You know what I mean? I think
Plastic
this,
Memories is one of the one of those like
this
classic ones.
strikes,
Yeah.
yeah, this strikes a very good balance between this sort of, um, the emotional robot tropes while also being quite funny, quite lighthearted, and also, sort of threading the needle in this sort of, uh, like what's happened to humanity kind of mystery, not mystery thing where it's like the audience kind of knows what's happened to humanity, right? But it's sort of being dangled in front of the characters as to like, you know, um, is somebody going to tell them, right? Because it's like obviously these are aliens. They're coming in from space. Humanity was supposed to be in space. So why exactly are none of these aliens telling these characters what's happened to humanity, stuff like that. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, it's good. I think it does a lot
Yeah.
of stuff really well. It is juggling a lot of things, but I think it's juggling them pretty well. Um,
Yeah.
and what it's doing, it's doing like it's playing into its strengths pretty well. I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And it's kind of it's staying within its lane and it's kind of doing it well. So
yeah, yeah.
all
So
right.
long as it doesn't
Uh,
merge into melodrama, I think
yeah. Too much. Yeah.
will
Yeah.
definitely like be a pretty solid series this season for sure.
Okay. What would you rate it?
Um, this is sitting at a 7.3 right now on Mall, which I think is
Hmm.
pretty fair for the first impressions so far. I think if it remains um this consistent, I can see this being a solid 8. Um, right now, I give it a pretty strong 7. But yeah, if it remains consistent, I think this could definitely be an 8 for sure. Um, I like it. It's cute. Um, yeah, it's good. It's a pretty easy recommend too. 'Cause like, it's
Hmm.
doing
Yeah.
it's doing a lot, right? I think it's got a lot of stuff
Yeah.
that appeals to a lot of different people. So,
But
um,
it is, yeah, it is making it all, it is keeping it in, it is managing it properly. So that's the big thing too. So,
yeah, yeah,
all right. Well, thank you so much, Nier, for helping to cover Apocalypse Hotel. This was an anime original, actually, being animated by Cygames Pictures. Cygames Pictures. This is the second series that we've reviewed so far. I don't know whether they've it's just these two or if they have another one in the decks for this season. But yeah,
I
this
think
is
for this
Cygames Pictures.
So
season,
near,
this is much it.
so
Okay,
near.
okay.
Yeah.
Who would win in a fight?
Between?
You know who I'm talking about.
No, I don't.
No.
Wally and apparently her name is Eve versus these robots.
Um, Well, Eve has like fucking lasers, doesn't she?
Hell
Well, that
yeah.
this other robot has a big like fucking railgun. So I think
Yeah.
these robots might win, to be honest. So
Yeah.
But will they? But you mentioned an alien invasion, right? What if they get invaded by Wall E and you?
um, I mean, so far all the aliens have been pretty peaceful. Um, so
Are
we've
there any?
seen
Are there any cool tentacle aliens that are giant yet? No.
that are giant.
I
No.
hope there are giant aliens that attack Earth,
Uh-huh. Well,
and they have to like.
there's no humans, so they don't really have any reason to attack
What if
Earth.
they? What if they want the trees? The deadly trees.
Um,
Don't you know? Don't you know? Wood is like is supposedly a very hard to find substance in space.
in the universe, yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty
What if they
rare.
want the trees?
Um,
Do you think they'll do some cool transforming into like a giant mech to fight off the alien invasion that you mentioned?
I don't think so. I
Oh,
don't think
that's
that's gonna
lame.
happen.
I don't know. You got a humanoid robot right there.
This is
Just
not this
you
is not a
just
trigger series, so I
uh,
don't think that's gonna
Yeah.
happen.
but it's a side game series,
I
and
don't
side
think
games does some good action.
I don't think the Verm are gonna invade. So
Oh, lame.
Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah.
I'll dock it a
Anyways,
point for that.
yeah. Anyways, I do want to move on. But thank you very much, Nier, for covering Apocalypse Hotel, and I hope you guys out there check it out too. Again, I think it's a very interesting, can be chill, but obviously has a little bit of a darker kind of foreshadowing at times. Series that is trying to juggle a lot of balls, but for surprisingly, uh, with this pretty uncommon in anime, they are doing a pretty good job of it, right? Usually, you don't get series where they're juggling two, three, four different like things that they want to do, and they're actually doing it well. Usually, they start failing, right? They start falling apart on the story, or they start falling apart on trying to develop the characters here and there locally, stuff like that. So, but yeah, please, if you are interested, please do check this out. Again, this is Apocalypse Hotel, anime original by Cygames Pictures.